For once, I actually agree with Kamala Harris.
Now, you all know that every 4 years, when this election happens for governor of Virginia, it's a tight election, it's a close election, and it is a bellwether for what happens in the rest of the country. Because you see, what happens in Virginia will in large part determine what happens in 2022, 2024, and on.
Well, will the Democrats, the progressives, the lying legacy media learn anything from last night? Will it be a wake-up call that America's just not ready for their radical agenda, or will they draw all of the wrong conclusions?
And the exit polls showed that which was interesting, that the coronavirus, or that the virus, was a very
has low
was not
salience.
importance to many of the voters there. It was education,
right,
which is code for white parents don't like the idea of teaching about race.
Boom, there it is. Yeah, Joy Reid over at PMS NBC. Of course, all of the parents that rose up to support Youngkin, obviously, they're just racist. Has anybody noticed that all across the nation where parents are gathering to stand against the critical race theory, that many of them, in fact, in some of these school board meetings, the majority of them are black? Black mothers, black fathers who do not want in any shape or form their kids thinking that they are somehow unable, inept, and not in any way have the giftings, the ability, the intelligence to be able to make it on their own. Especially many of these parents who themselves are career professionals who have really gone out and achieved the American dream. They don't want their kids being told they can't, and a whole new type of segregation being created, all in the name of liberal white guilt, which they say is so beneficial because, after all, we have so suppressed black people. We've got to properly teach the racial divide in our country, and Black America is pushing back on that. Case in point, Minneapolis. The entire defund the police initiative on the ballot went down in flames. Big time. And you know who led that? Black families. They don't want less police on the streets. They want more police on the streets. In fact, one black pastor called defunding the police the ultimate in white supremacy. That's right. Take the police away. Take the law and order away. Take the protection away, and we'll just kill each other off. That's what the white supremacists want. Wait. I don't think the liberals saw that one coming. And all of the liberal council members that supported that idea of defund the police, they are basically being put out to pasture. And all across the country, school boards were completely overturned because during the pandemic, when schools were locked down, shut down, parents got to actually see what their kids were doing in school. I said this over a year ago, that number one, parents, when they begin to realize what's going on in the classroom, they're going to be outraged and they're going to take their schools back. Number two, I said, liberals blinked on the whole shut down the school issue. That was all about giving into the teachers' unions because, they were so afraid that these little kids were going to give them the virus, even though the science, which we're supposed to be following, the medical evidence, which is overwhelming, proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, children, number one, are very, very, very almost non-statistically in any jeopardy of getting the virus. And they're not super spreaders. So this whole hogwash where children were kept away from their elderly grandparents, you talk about the mental anguish that put on children and senior adults. But of course, Fauci will never have to answer for that. But school teachers played that as we can't be in harm's way by these little monsters breathing on us. And when they did reopen, basically these kids have to sit there all day in a hazmat suit and behind a clear plastic shield at their desk. I mean, it's just over the top unbelievable, even though those same teachers, when they were being furloughed because of coronavirus, they're down in Cancun, Mexico, down on the beaches in Florida. They're just partying it up because, again, it's do as I say, not as I do. Well, there was a reality check in that by shutting the schools down for a year, liberals actually cut off their influence over the hearts and minds of young people. And we haven't seen the full repercussion of that, but now that parents are re-engaged, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby. And that is exactly what happened in Virginia last night. It's happening across the country. And on that level, it is a good thing. Now, I know you're hearing a lot of victory laps on most of conservative media and on most conservative bloggers and podcasters, and that's great. And yep, we're going to do a little bit of taking a victory lap today. But, I'm a bit cautious in this area. Let me get that part out of the way, and then we'll get on to the celebration, and I'll give you my observations as to what all of Tuesday night means. At some point, maybe it's already happened, I don't know, the liberal, lying, legacy, corporate, corrupt mainstream media and liberal pundits and even the never-Trumpers will use last night as a way to vindicate and say, see, look at that. Because you got the results you wanted, you're not even remotely questioning these election results, are you, Trump people? Does that mean that the election shenanigans have been fixed? Or does it mean Democrats went into Tuesday night cocky, overconfident, and convinced, we got this one? I mean, really, up until about 4 days before the election, McAuliffe was supposed to be an absolute slam dunk for Virginia. It was just, the polls had him up 8, up 10, and there was that one Fox News poll that came out about 4 days before the election that showed Youngkin in the lead, and most of the mainstream media dismissed that, laughed it off as wishful conservative thinking, and nobody was paying any attention to what was going on in New Jersey. That was just considered to be a slam dunk for the re-election of Governor Murphy. But I remember a year ago when he was on Tucker Carlson, and he had his fist down as far as the overreaching lockdowns and shutdowns that were happening in New Jersey, including on houses of worship. And Tucker asked him if he was familiar that within the Constitution, churches assembling were protected under the First Amendment. And Murphy said something, and I'm not sure if he was being sarcastic or he really was this uninformed and stupid, said, no, I didn't realize that churches were protected by the First Amendment. And Tucker responded immediately with, well, obviously. And I said then, these Democratic governors with all this overreach, they are in trouble. They are in trouble. They are in trouble. But again, there's this idea that the Northeast is an absolute lock for the Democrats, for the liberals. And I think they paid very little attention to what was going on in New Jersey, just assumed it would be a slam dunk. I mean, Murphy won the state by 15 points. Joe Biden carried the state by 16 points. And along comes a Republican, a conservative who ran on everything from there'll be no CRT in our schools till there'll be no mandates in our state, no mask mandates, no vaccine mandates, etc. Nobody paid him any attention. He was supposed to get blown out of the water, and now we have a statistical tie at the production of this monologue in New Jersey. So my takeaway from Virginia and New Jersey on those 2 points, I don't know that the Democrats really did their typical shenanigans because they felt they had those 2 elections in the bag. The same was true when Donald Trump ran against Hillary Rodham Clinton in 2016. I am absolutely convinced that they just assumed nobody is going to vote for this orange man, blowhard, quasi-reality TV personality, why they're going to go at the end of the day with the seasoned politician Hillary Rodham Clinton. And America said, oh, no, we're not. So they really doubled down after President Trump in 2020. On top of hitting him from day one with Russian collusion, 2 impeachments, and then, of course, using the plandemic to close the economy, kill jobs, kill the economy, and make it appear in the news night after night after night after night that, literally everybody is dying because of Donald Trump's ineptness, and the guy in the basement is going to be able to save us all. You'll still never convince me 81 million people voted for Joe Biden. More people voted for him than voted for Barack Obama. Give me a break. And I know I can't say what I really want to say here about the 2020 election, or this video will get pulled. But yeah, you know, because again, the shenanigans were in full swing. They were leaving nothing to chance. But I believe that last night, they just assumed Virginia might be close, but at the end, they brought in the big guns. Obama went there. Camilla thinks she's a hottie Harris went there. Joe Biden was there, kind of fumbling around in Arlington and mumbling to himself. Stacey Abrams. I almost wonder if that was one of the other things that played against Terry McAuliffe. First of all, Terry McAuliffe himself is an absolute arrogant, condescending, nasty individual. I mean, he just exudes jerk. I know there's other stronger adjectives I could use, but actually jerk is pretty. Terry McAuliffe is just a jerk, and he's arrogant, and he talks down to people. And I was watching Camilla thinks she's a hottie Harris, 2 speeches on behalf of McAuliffe, and again, that cackle and that she's constantly talking to people, even their supporters, talking to them like she's a kindergarten teacher and they're 5-year-olds, and she's having to explain everything. Okay. Like, you're stupid, we're smart, go with us. That's her whole presentation. But I really wonder if the people in Virginia who are already not really all that into Terry because of the fact he's so arrogant, so condescending, you bring in Stacey Abrams. And again, they call her one of the big guns, but she is the failed gubernatorial candidate of Georgia. Failed gubernatorial candidate. And I find it hilarious that, she worked to have and put the pressure on Major League Baseball to pull the All-Star game out of Atlanta. Then when she realized it was going to affect the bottom line of literally hundreds of black-owned businesses, then she asked Major League Baseball to reconsider after they had already given the All-Star game to Colorado. And the Atlanta Braves last night win the World Series. And as a New York Mets fan, I hate the Atlanta Braves, but last night was the cherry on the sundae as the ultimate let's go Brandon to the entire Democratic Party, Democratic way of thinking, Democratic progressive policies. But Terry McAuliffe actually saying in a debate, we are not going to let parents dictate to the schools what will be taught. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Now, CNN and PMSNBC are trying to play off the critical race theory in the classroom in Virginia. It's made up. It's not even being taught there. And Juan Williams tried to regurgitate that over on Faux Pas News, formerly known as Fox News. First of all, what does Juan Williams know? Nothing. That's one of the Democratic talking points that was released that, if Youngkin were to pull off this miracle win, one of the things we're going to say is that CRT is a made-up issue. It's not made up. The teachers may not call it critical race theory, but the skeleton, the bones of it, this idea that 5-year-old white kids are supposed to feel guilty that they're white, and we're going to separate black and white kids in the classroom because, black kids feel bad if they have to sit by what, it's just a modern form of segregation done under the cloak and the guise of liberalism. But in the end, it really is all about segregation, which is exactly what happened in Minneapolis when the black community rose up and said, no, we want our police, and to take police and protection away from us is the ultimate white supremacist fantasy that we'll just kill each other off. Boom. So when they kept talking about, though, last night on some of these media pundits about, CRT is a made-up issue, and even Brett Baer pushed back on Juan Williams over at Faux Pas News that, wait a minute, we have heard from literally hundreds of parents who have been to school board meetings, and they have engaged their school boards over this. This wasn't something that Youngkin made up and then they took it and ran with it. This was a problem that was brought to him, and he picked that issue up and ran with it. Now, of course, one of the things that the liberals and the Never Trumpers are trying to make hay over today is that Youngkin snubbed Donald Trump, that he wouldn't participate in the Monday night virtual rally, and he didn't invite Donald Trump in. Well, Youngkin, first of all, really didn't invite anybody in. Youngkin's approach was just himself and a sleeveless fleece to go, town to town, event to event, rally to rally, and just engage with people himself. That was his strategy. He stood firm on the Trump agenda. We all have to put our big boy pants on, and in politics, we understand that there was a chunk there in Virginia that might have been a little bit put back if Donald Trump had been there. And Donald Trump certainly wasn't going to do anything to jeopardize Youngkin's chances of winning the governorship. But of course, the liberals today are all about, now this is what the Republican Party has to do going forward. They've all got to be like Youngkin. No. Youngkin did a masterful job of focusing on the local issues that were important to the people of Virginia. But the whole idea, though, and I want to blow this fantasy right out of the water, that the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media and the Never Trumpers and the whole quasi tepid conservative media are going with that that Donald Trump would have hurt Youngkin in Virginia. No, because that's how McAuliffe ran. McAuliffe, at every campaign stop and at every speech, made it about Trump, 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 Trump. Maybe, this is analysis you won't hear anywhere else, maybe those constant comparisons to Trump really help Youngkin. On top of the education, the economy, stupid. I said that yesterday. The economy, stupid. The economy in Virginia is terrible. Youngkin is a businessman, self-made millionaire, like a Donald Trump. So they wanted Youngkin on the education, and the constant comparisons to Trump solidified in the minds of the people, especially those moderates and independents. You know what? Donald Trump really did know how to handle the economy, and that he did. And I'm going to say something to the former president that please do not take this as my leaving the Trump train. I'm not. But God has a wonderful way of taking things that other people put on us to try to hurt us, to try to stop us, to try to hinder us and push us back. God has a wonderful way of taking literally what our so-called enemies throw on us and turning it right back around on them. Mr. President, I know you feel cut off from people because all of your social media platforms were taken away from you. I believe that God vindicated you on that last night. I really, really do. And here's what I mean by that. If the president had been tweeting during this whole campaign and election cycle, the media and the pundits would have made everything about Trump. But because he doesn't have that social media presence, the people don't have any fresh new tweets to look at to have misinterpreted to them so that they can get mad and upset and go, yeah, that's why I don't like him. There's none of that. There's nothing out there for the people, but they do begin to remember what it was like when gas was $1.50 a gallon. When they walked in stores and the shelves were full. When there was no inflation. When people were actually making more money and companies were giving out bonuses for the first time in decades because the Trump economy was so rocking. Here's where I'm going with this. By Trump actually not tweeting, it has made the country nostalgic for him. Because the two candidates one that has definitely won because McAuliffe has conceded, and the other that certainly, whether he wins New Jersey or not, this wasn't supposed to happen this way in New Jersey. This is a definite to the liberal agenda. He ran on all of Trump's issues as well. The takeaway, the real takeaway here, not the phony one you'll get from Mr. Magoo and his pole dancing wife, Mika, over there on Morning Schmuck with Joe Magoo. The real takeaway here is America wants Trump back. They want candidates that run on Trump issue. The Trump policies are fantastic. By him not tweeting, and the election results of last night, it was a reset for the Trump agenda. Bum, ba-dum, bum. And now you're going to have people like, well, I think maybe Joe Manchin will jump parties now. I would say the Biden agenda at this point is fairly dead because there are some moderate Democrats that are up for re-election next year. Don't think they weren't up last night watching election results. Yeah, there were a lot of things on the table last night, and it wasn't just CRT and education. It was everything. We saw our leader fall asleep at the climate summit, which why did he even go? Because the two biggest violators on the planet weren't there. China. Aren't we always told by Greta Thunberg and AOC and the rest of that green ilk that if we will punish ourselves and do the right thing regarding new energy, well, then China and Russia and the other countries, they will follow our lead and they'll do it too. No, they won't. And since Joe Biden didn't sail over to the summit on a, what does Greta call her yacht? Oh yeah, a solar-powered yacht. We used to call that a sailboat back in the day. He didn't sail over there on a sailboat. He flew in a jet plane. And all these candidates crisscrossing the country, talking about we got to have green energy, green energy. It's funny, they don't drive around on electric buses, do they? Those aren't electric cars and they're caravan. The whole thing is hogwash and hypocrisy, and it's just a way for liberals to exert more control over us, strip us of more of our rights and our freedom, and another way to raise taxes and steal money. That's it. And people have woken up to it. I have to tell you, I am excited at the possibility that a political revival was awakened. That people, and one of the talking heads over at CNN said, well, that Youngkin reminds them of the normal Republicans she used to cover, and she's very hopeful that the Republicans will get back to that. Yeah, we'll see. Because if they go back to the whole Mitt Romney, they're dead. They're done. They're doomed. Youngkin, and is it Soretti, I haven't quite grasped his name yet there in New Jersey, because again, I wasn't paying any attention to New Jersey. They ran as Trumpers. They ran on the Trump agenda. And one is definitely one, and the other is right there. Right there. And again, it shouldn't be that way. There's 1 million more registered Democrats in New Jersey than Republicans, which means a whole lot of independents and Democrats crossed the party line. Bum, ba-dum, bum. This is so right when Kamala said, this really is a reality check. This really is a bellwether for what the rest of the country. And make no mistake about it, everything was on the table last night. The border crisis, the crappy economy under Joe Biden, and the absolute overreach of COVID mandates from blue state governors and Joe Biden himself. This was a smackback on vaccine mandates and everything else where they have politicized and made it all about, you will do what we say. And the American people said, it is still we the people, and you will do what we say.
Now, you all know that every 4 years when this election happens for governor of Virginia, it's a tight election, it's a close election, and it is a bellwether for what happens in the rest of the country.
Hey, that's it for this rant. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Smack the bell, click the word all to get notification of my next rant.